Okay, whenever you're ready, Dan.
Stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic from which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, we allow topics from the floor limited to 5 minutes, so that something is not on the agenda.
Maybe pretty hard. Glad to see that Mr. Rosengard and Ms. Kazner aren't here. Hopefully they're gone permanently. Because I don't think that they should be on this commission because they've lied publicly. I will continue to bring that up until they leave or get replaced. I also want to talk a little bit about the sign ordinance, which the city is not enforcing despite numerous complaints. And I don't know that that's your purview. But certainly, I don't know who to complain to. Going to complain to the city council. I have already done that. I'm coming to you. There's blatant issues, not just with signs being in the right of way, which frankly I was told that they're not even going to enforce that. But signs are being lighted, which is a clear violation, and it's spreading. And if you're not going to have an ordinance that you enforce, then repeal it. You know, if it's there, enforce it. If it's not going to be enforced, then it should be changed or repealed. And I'm hoping that you can help put pressure on the city planner and or this elections official. I'm confused because I've talked to half the people here about it and not gotten very far. I'm very frustrated. And so I'm hoping that whatever you guys can do to help enforce or say, this is part of planning. We have ordinances for a reason. They need to be obeyed and followed. The last thing is the police station. The police station, I listened to your conversation about moving it to a new location. I think that's a horrible idea. I think it's not a good spot. I think we jump from one frying pan into another, and it's the plan that the city's done time and time and time and time again. We can take a breath. We can pause. Nothing is on fire. We do not need to jump into finding another location and jumping into a police station at a location that isn't suited. Frankly, I think the location where it's at is the best source. And I'd like to open up the whole conversation about, can we not remodel that station? There's plenty of property there. And I don't know if any of you have gone through the police station. We do not need another police station. We need storage. That's what we need. If you look there, they are overburdened. They are, you know, there are rooms that are stuffed. The rooms that are stuffed are evidence. We can build a climate controlled evidence locker for cheap. Also make it a garage, which is probably 60% of the current police station. Then you'd have a garage and move the evidence locker. That building would be half empty, more than half empty, and remodel it. And we could probably do that between $3 and $5 million instead of $30 million for a police station with another crazy swap of land with the school district. It's just stupid. We don't need the police on that side of the highway anyhow, frankly. But it can be, should stay where it's at, and we can remodel. And these are not decisions that we should make lightly, quickly, and again, in my opinion, irrationally. It needs more thought, more timing, more planning, and you don't need to jump ahead. Thank you.
The other topics on the floor not on the agenda. Okay. We approve the plan commission minutes dated September 10, 2024.
Make motion to approve the opinion.
was up there, so I'm not sure how we.
Susie well, Susie wasn't there either.
Jenny?
Jenny, I mean Susie, Jenny.
Jenny was there.
Was she there? Let's see.
Think so.
Nope.
She wasn't.
Huh?
Oh, she was, yeah.
I watched it, so I would be up to speed. I thought I saw her. So.
Well, they traded. They had three of the commission and three different ones. That's good. I guess I have to go. Right?
Well, you said you watched the meeting.
Did watch the meeting.
Oh, okay.
It's more about accuracy.
Yeah.
So I think Jennifer.
Okay, I'll second it then.
Have you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Lenny?
Yeah, I see you're unmuted. Are you saying anything? We can't hear you.
Have a smoke signal.
Or can you start video and give us a thumbs up, maybe? Oh, it's her room.
Shoe.
It's gone missing.
She's clearly hearing us, though. We can come back.
Okay, we'll come back
IT
when you
problem.
get some sound.
Oh,
we get-
there she is.
Oh, hey, hi Jenny.
And a thumbs up. Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
All right.
We got another one, so stay tuned.
Hopefully we can get this sound working. in between.
So we also have the joint meeting of the planning commission and city council. Is that accurate?
I move that we approve the minutes for the joint meeting. Dated September 25th, 2024.
We'll second that. I watched it, so.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Jenny? Thumbs up? Okay,
Yes,
Yeah.
hey, I hear your
we're
voice.
good.
Oh, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, we'll sign it right now.
Yeah. There you go. I had to click it on the right microphone, that's all.
Never get that done properly.
We're out of COVID. I don't Zoom very often.
All right, you ready for the hearing? It is now 6:07 PM. The public hearing is now open. This is a quasi judicial land use hearing. Subject to this hearing is a request for a conditional use permit, unlisted use, and an access variance. The subject property is identified in the county assessor's map as lot 300 on map 4N1W 9BB. The applicant is Aiken Architecture and Design LLC. The owner is Columbia Community Mental Health. Because quasi judicial proceedings require the observance of certain procedural formalities, I'd like to take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the commission wish to declare a potential or actual conflict of interest or bias in this matter? Jenny? Have you bias or conflict of interest?
No conflict.
Okay. Does any member of the commission wish to declare any ex parte communication or site visits? Jenny?
Shaking her head no.
Okay. Does anyone from the audience object to the ability of a commissioner to make a fair decision? Not seeing any. Generally, the order of proceedings will be as follows. Required statements, staff report, applicant's presentation, those in favor of the application, neutral testimony, those opposed, rebuttal by applicant, final questions, close of the record, deliberations, and decision. The following statements are required to be made at the commencement of the hearing. Whoop.
Keep it exciting.
Where was I? The following statements are required to be made at the commencement of the hearing pursuant to the city code and ORS 197.7975. Following is a list of the applicable substantive criteria for this decision. St. Helens Municipal Code 17.32.040, 17.84.50, and 17.100.040. All testimony arguments and evidence must be directed towards the applicable substantive criteria as described, or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or land use regulation, which the person believes applies to the decision. Failure to raise an issue, including constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval in this hearing in person or in writing, or failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the approving authority an opportunity to respond to the issue, precludes appeal to LUBA, the Land Use Appeal Board of Appeals, on that issue and precludes an action for damages in city court. Staff.
Thank you, Harry. So this is a multifaceted application. We have an unlisted use application. Some places call that a determination of similar use, and that's simply a tool where, you know, codes aren't perfect and things evolve, and typically things evolve quicker than codes do. It's a mechanism. If something doesn't quite fit, if you look at all the definitions, that you can think about it logically, whether or not that use is allowed. So that's what that tool is for. So we'll talk about that. There's also an access variance. Gable is a arterial street, and there's a driveway that they want to keep for a shop that's closer distance than we would allow for today. So they want to keep that. So we'll talk about that. And then there's also a conditional use permit. And that's the most significant part of the application. That's the part that approves basically further development of the PCMH campus. Now, you may have seen the initial packet of stuff and then this extra memorandum that was kind of thrown in there. And so they had planned this portion, well, a building roughly 5,200 square feet in size. And as things progressed, they scored or potentially scored, I'm sure they'll talk about this, some other funding source to add basically a second building of similar size, maybe slightly smaller. And that actually came up about the same time that the staff report was due. So it was kind of a last minute thing for me. And since then, I've talked to our legal counsel about it and talked with them as well as their architect. And what I believe what's going to happen is we will try to conquer the unlisted use and access variance tonight. And then so that this new addition to the conditional use permit can be properly reviewed in accordance with all of our processes. Because the issue is that we deemed the application complete and sent all the legal notices based on the original application. So basically we need to do that over again. And so the hearing will be continued to a date to be determined in accordance with a future notice. So I know that's a mouthful of process and sorry.
So it's already continued to today.
Yeah, and so, you know, one of the things we'll be asking for is a waiver to the 120-day rule. Because, you know, they could just say, well, we'll just withdraw that and start over. I don't think they want to do that. So we'll just need a little more grace. And the 120-day rule, just as a reminder, is the rule in state statute that requires governments basically not to just sit on something forever, essentially. So let's start with the unlisted use. As I mentioned, that's a tool to look at your listed uses and, okay, is there something that doesn't quite fit, but it could with a little bit of thought? And so what they're talking about doing is allowing their proposal as an intermediate care facility. And basically it's people, sleeping quarters, dwelling units with some degree of supervision. Now, the definition is a little bit more technical in the report. That's just my Cliff Notes version of that. If we look at uses that are possible in the general commercial zone, we know multifamily is possible because we have Broadleaf Arbor departments that everybody loves, including the police and fire department. In particular, so we know multifamily is possible there. And of course, that's just your normal dwelling unit. There's no care, there's no supervision, or anything like that. On the other end of the spectrum, what's clearly listed in the zoning district are senior or convalescent care. And that's where there is a great degree of supervision. And this kind of fits in between. And so based on that, you could have a positive view of the determination of similar use. You know, when kind of looking at it from staff's standpoint, because it's kind of in between that spectrum, all right, well, that's logical. Now, another thing to keep in mind is the definition of quote unquote residential facility. And this is something that I've been dealing with my entire career. I started in 2001, and so it's been around. And a residential facility has a very distinct definition of being licensed by the state and up to 16 beds. And in the discussion of what CCMH wants to do early on, we're like, we're trying to fit this peg into a hole, but hole do we put it in? Because it's not quite a residential facility. It could be. Scott, you have a question?
I was wondering if that has obviously come up in other cities, that a residential, you know, they have the same issue. I'm wondering how they might have addressed it.
It may have. We didn't do the research on other cities. We're just kind of reacting to stuff happening. But you know, codes, you know, they could be old and clunky, and as things evolve, especially mental health stuff has evolved over the last couple decades. So that's residential facility, and that's kind of where, well, we're trying to get the peg to work. Interestingly, intermediate care facility is defined in our code. It's just not listed in any of the zoning districts. So kind of looking at that based on the explanation I gave at the staff level, you know, we're comfortable recommending approval of that. However, you know, there's the devil's advocate part. You know, was the code intentional in defining it, but not listing it? And is the code intending to be residential facility has to be it, and with no flexibility? And you know, I'm not arguing that that's the way you should think about, but you know, you like to present both sides just to give you, you know, something to chew on. So that's the unlisted use portion. And that would make it very clear that what they're doing is okay in the general commercial zone. So let's talk about the access variance. So currently, the portion of Gable Road abutting their site doesn't have any frontage improvements. There's not even curves. And so it's just the old school ditch and you know, so a couple access points. One of those access points serves a small shop, 625 square feet on the eastern side of the site. And this driveway is less than 200 feet from the neighboring intersection, and that's the spacing that we're looking at. Now, let me back up briefly. The reason that we need to be extra picky about access here is because Gable is an arterial street. If this was just a local street, it'd be like, man, accesses, have your accesses. But because it's an arterial, get more excited about that because the code wants us to get more excited about it, not because we're trying to show off our ego or some stupid thing like that. So we have this distance issue. Now, I will note that in the applicant's narrative, they talk about this 150-foot spacing. You know, I wrote a separate memo because things happened on the adjoining property. It kind of evolved organically, and a potential shared driveway, which could be something that is legit, It would give you the 150 feet, but based on the record and things that have been legit, it would be 110 feet. So it's kind of a distance technicality, but we just wanted to note that difference.
You're saying 150 feet?
Um,
I thought it's 200 feet, and you're saying it's 151 feet?
200 feet is the minimum.
Yeah. So
They're saying that the measured distance is 150 feet. Staff is saying, well, based on
it's 110.
legit stuff, it's 110. There's some accesses that haven't been 100% permitted yet. That's why I made that separate memo in there, just for the record. Otherwise, we wouldn't have brought the stuff going on in that property into this. But we're measuring from that access, so kind of becomes important.
Adjacent property in the city, or is it county still?
The adjoining one is in the county. Yeah, but Gable Road is a city facility. So it would be our right of way permit. And that's why we're a little bit more excited about that property too. It does directly affect us, other than just being within our urban growth boundary. So in the access variance, you have a couple things to think about, couple options. So the first one, you can just deny it. No access. And that's not what staff's recommending. There's two ways to think about in allowing it. Now, you could allow it for the shop and be exclusive to the shop. So, okay, it's cool, this access is okay, but it needs to serve the shop and nothing else. And the basis there is that shop by itself, serving CCMH staff, would not have that significant amount of vehicle trip generation. And so, it's probably not the end of the world. And by keeping it to the shop, it's never gonna really blow up. Now, the other approach, if we look at our code, when we're developing along arterial streets, it talks about having frontage service roads or interconnecting parking lots or parking areas, basically interconnectedness. And the idea there is if you have short local trips, you're not burdening the arterial street with those trips. And, there may be some argument in the case of CCMH valuing that shop for access and maintaining the Gable Road access, but also having an internal access. So you have multiple options to reach that all important shop, which is necessary for maintenance throughout the community. At least that's my understanding. And so that's another question then, if you allow the variance, should any subsequent development ensure that you have internal connectedness? So deny it or approve it exclusive to the shop, or approve it with a broader connectedness scheme within the site.
Connected to the access itself? Connected to the access itself, or connected just to the building?
Connected to, yeah, I should explain that. So you have, if you have those three accesses, 2 on Gable, 1 on McNulty Way. That way, and they can all be accessed internally. So if I'm in the middle of the site, I can use each one. And that's honoring that internal connectiveness. But I think with the variance, that would be a tool to say, okay, well, we don't have to have that connectiveness. We can just have it be exclusive to the shop. Normally, we would look for that connectiveness. But with the variance, maybe you can just say, okay, having this one exclusive to the shop, that's fine. So that's just something to think about. So then the conditional use permit.
Jacob, Jenny was asking for a map. I don't know if there's something you can refer her to in the staff report, but
This has a map, has it on
we're
the
not
map.
showing anything in the room.
Yeah, I think if you look at your site plan and you look at the easternmost driveway. And it'll show that little shop. And basically the driveway that's towards the right, if you're looking at the plans, that's the one we're talking about. And we can put it on the screen, and just point to it with the arrow. Just to ensure everybody is on the same page.
Can I ask you a question still on that? In the middle of your talk here? Jacob? So if we allowed the access only to the shop. With the intention that they could have internal access. To the shop, let's say even. And the shop burns down, whatever. Does that mean that they're gonna have access to internal from that access point again?
Well, and that's a good question. So if it is exclusive to the shop and the shop is destroyed or something to that effect. It being that rigid would mean it would have to go.
Yeah. That's what you said in your.
Okay. That's what's just for,
And you could, you could soften that to where, well, it could be the shop or maybe future emergency access. Because that would be limited access.
It's internal access, would it require improvements instead of just being a gravel?
Well, we would, if it was internal, the condition would be that it would be incorporated into a future development, which is kind of development that we're looking at now. The future is very imminent in this case. And we would figure out the standards, but normally our code talks about areas for public access being paved. And, maybe there's an exception depending on how things shape up, but we would have to kind of react to their proposal on that.
I guess that's what I asked, because oftentimes we give approval for that and then some other purpose comes along years from now.
Yeah.
And do they have that?
Yeah,
Forever?
and that's why, one of the things I mentioned in the staff report is if you're leaning towards the, exclusive to the shop scenario, so that it just doesn't live in the conditions of approval, you would record a land use restriction on the deed so that it's also identified in the deed records.
Technically, they could flip the door around to the back and have the shop being accessed only from internally.
Yeah, there's, and
It's got a lot of trees to get there, but
yeah, and I kind of talk about that in the report, as you probably saw. So that's the access variance. Now, because we have the public hearing and there's probably gonna be some testimony. I should talk about the condition use permit. If this is continued, it'll be a revised discussion at a later hearing, but here we are, so. I'll just go through the issues briefly. First of all, the parking associated with some of the newer development. And if we look at this plan, it's going to be kind of the north half or the darker portion. This time period was pretty chaotic. It was right before Matt was employed with CCMH, and they hired a contractor and they started doing a bunch of work in the right of way on the McNulty Way side. And that became a big issue. We had to get that resolved. And some modulars were added and some parking was added in the county. And I never had a chance to take a close look at those, back in the day, but looking at it again today, we noticed some discrepancies between what's on the plans and what was actually physically done. And some of the disabled parking seems kind of quirky. And it's talked about that in the report. And all is not going to be, yeah, I'll use this, the mouse. So for example, so you have these two buildings here.
Ginny, can you see the mouse?
Yeah, can you see this cursor that I'm moving up and down?
I see the cursor and I have the big map.
Okay, great. Thank
So
you.
I can understand what you're saying and I have the big map.
Okay. Thanks.
So, like, for example, the parking, arrangement as striped here differs from the plans. But as far as accessibility, one example is the ramp for these buildings is kind of here. And the accessible space is over here. This is a step. So if someone was parked here, they'd have to go around here, around a couple parallel parking spaces, which aren't striped, but identified on the plans, and come over here. And so it just seems kind of weird. And this one's also weird here, this old house. Now they are proposing to fix this with that. In any case, we talk about just buttoning that stuff up. So we talked about the use. That's why we have the unlisted use application. The applicant does propose the street frontage improvements along Gable Road. And we have received citizen comments after the staff report was done. Those have been handed to you. We were both received yesterday from the body property owners, both of which just love, I am being sarcastic, the idea of a potential median, which is in our riverfront connector refinement plan. And that's just a refinement plan from original transportation systems plan. And so we should talk about that a bit. Now, the planning commission can allow a deviation in a cross section. And in fact, in this case, we are talking about one, and that is adjacent to a wetland complex by the intersection of McNulty and Gable Road. And we've had several examples of the middle school is one, and the Forest Trail subdivision, that's the one Rich Bailey did a few years back, where there were street improvements along wetlands. We wanted to reduce the impact to the wetlands. And our code says that existing trees can be used for street trees when allowed. And so the idea was, oh, okay, well, we'll just say that the street trees are behind the sidewalk. And so we sacrifice the landscaping strip for that to reduce the impact. So that's something we've done a lot before. Now, the median, the corridor plan talks about a median for a turn lane. And so going either way, it really isn't a deviation. And typically those kind of details are finalized post land use decision. So I don't know if that's really within your purview, other than, you know, the city being aware, okay, there's concerns about access. Maybe there's some more discussion about the final plans for that.
So are you saying that the median as drawn plans is not something we're going to review, as something the city would be reviewing?
Yeah, it'd be the city engineering and final construction design. I think, you know, it's something that, you know, maybe you give some recommendations on to, you know, in your design, please consider access to important abutting commercial and industrial properties or something like that. But getting into the nitpicky of this is exactly where the island should be, you know, that gets into traffic engineering stuff. Engineering is beyond the scope of this effort.
In the property directly across Gable Road. It has their access
Both.
on the received September 30th map. Shows a access on the other side of the street that right median Seems like it'd make it difficult for them to get in and out of that site.
That's what he said.
Yeah, that's what that's their concern. Yeah, that's their
I
concern.
see that, I guess is what I'm saying here.
So, and not surprising, people want to have accesses and as much access as they can, and not surprising, there's concerned about eastbound traffic, not being able to access those.
Blow the concrete. These trucks.
So street trees, there's probably not a lot of tree replacement. I think street trees will accommodate those. We talked about the internal circulation stuff. I think some of that will depend on how you view the access variance. There's some walkway stuff that needs to be improved. That's just a condition of approval. There's a condition about not approving future stuff. Anything conceptually in the future is conceptual. That we want to say that we're approving now. Sanitary sewer is not well addressed in the application. Our understanding, and you can correct us if we're mistaken, is that some of it has been in the city for a long time, some of it hasn't very, very long. And the portion that's been in the city for a long time is connected to the city sewer system via a step system. Septic, effluent, pump system, I think that's what it calls for. So it's a tank that's pressurized that pumps the nasty stuff up to the main to eventually go to the wastewater treatment pond or cooling pond, depending on who you are. And so my understanding, let me back up. So the portion that hasn't been in the city very long is served by an on-site system. And my understanding is they're going to get rid of all the on-site stuff and just rely on the step system. So that does mean some coordination with the county, because they're the people who have authority over on-site systems is involved. So that's the sewer stuff. We have the same sewer issue as we do in most parts of the city with some conveyance problems. And so there's an extra fee scheme that is in the conditions of approval. Speaking of utilities, we do have some overhead utilities coming into the site. And as is typical in the conditions, we talk about those are okay. And overhead utility may continue as long as there's not new poles. And another important thing that I noted is that these poles are also being used for site lighting. And so they have a double purpose. So if we said get rid of the poles, everybody wouldn't have the poles for lights. So that'd be kind of mean. There was a zone change recently on this site from industrial to commercial. And there was a vehicle trip cap placed on that. Basically, all the uses over time cannot exceed 700 average daily vehicle trips. This adds 40 something. So we're not close, but we just have to track that given that decision. So that's the issues in a quick nutshell. I think that's it for me for now.
Now time for applicant's presentation. What you can come up?
The access. White. Yeah, no, I start off with that. Sure. Can I go up here and point to some of this? Okay.
Could you state your name for the record?
My name's Matt Remsburg. I'm the facility supervisor for CCMH. Okay, first of all, the ADA, there's actually an ADA ramp right back here. Is there? Okay. Yeah, that you can't see there. So there's one here and one here, and this one has access from this ADA part. You need to add another one. Add another. So there is a ramp back here that you just can't see.
Good to know.
And it goes to the double wide also.
Yes. It is. I'll just address the sewer system really quickly. We do have a sewer system that's back here. It's in this area here. And that provides the sewer for these three buildings and this building. And our goal is to put get all of our facilities onto the city sewer eventually, put in the infrastructure so that we can put this building in and all of these buildings on the city sewer system. So upgrade this whole system here.
And does eventually mean with this project?
Yes, we're gonna put in, the plan is to put in, figure out what we need for infrastructure, put it in now for this building, then the phase 2 of this building, which is the one that we have the addendum on. And then also for these buildings or sites. And sewer water and sewer water.
Yes,
Yes, yes, everything.
electricity.
The other, okay, and then as far as the shop access goes. What we'd like to do is just keep the access the same as what it is now. This right here is an old access from the neighbors and they have recently, well, I don't know how recently, but they put in another access that's down further down their property. And our surveyor, the surveyed property went off of the center of that new access that they have down here, and that's where the 150 feet from that new access. This access, which from what I understand, that new access wasn't permitted, correct? So this access right here has been, they fenced that off, you got a fence across it now. If we do. We eventually plan on replacing these wides and having other buildings here and potentially another building back here once we're up on the city sewer and can take this old sewer system out. So gaining access to this building right now from an internal road would mean taking out a lot of trees and potentially, because we have another building going in right here very soon, or we hope to, putting in another road to connect that to this parking structure is not really feasible at this time. Again, we'd like to just keep this driveway as it is now if we can. Please.
Now, are you okay that it's exclusive to the shop and then just kind of?
Well, I don't know about that because we do want to put a building back here and we may want to do something there in the future. So am I okay with it? I can't say that I'm okay with it.
I got it. Okay.
Yeah. You have any other questions? I can answer.
Come on. So I'm in mental health. And this stuff is really foreign.
State your name.
Oh, sorry, Todd Jacobson, Executive Director of PCA. So, yeah, I'm learning it really well. And so it's a fun industry, but I can't speak the language very well. So bear with me. Is there any questions you have for us? Because I think Jacob did a fine job sort of outlining the similar use requests that we're going for. I mean, do you want to know what the intent and purpose and the future development is? I mean, so I'll just tell you. So we're developing, the building in this proposal is a 16-bed SUD facility. It's going to be constructed to licensing standards so that when OHA comes out here and licenses the building, it'll meet all their code requirements. So it's being built under ORS 443 standards. And those standards move down into the OARs, which are OAR 309-018. And if you look into 309-018 standards, you'll see the facility requirements. That's how this building is going to be built to those standards. So it's licensed. The only really benefit from a licensed facility under OHA is that there's pros and cons, right? I think from a community perspective, the pro is that we get paid when people get in there. That's what licensing affords us. So we move someone into one of the bedrooms, we get paid. If it's not licensed, we don't get paid. But the pro to that is it gives us flexibility who we can use the rooms for. Currently, we're using a lot of the hotel rooms for crisis individuals, people under substance abuse issues. We're using the hotels. We prefer not to use a hotel because those are they're not supervised. not supervised well. This will be a supervised facility where we have someone when they're in the room, when someone's occupying the room, we have someone on site 24/7. So they're not absconding, they're not bringing in illicit drugs, they're not bringing in any other sort of, criminal sort of element into the facility that isn't observed or managed. So that's a pro to the community and to the individual being served. So that flexibility is what it affords us, the similar use. And this is in response, if you're watching the news, is that, Oregon is number 50th in the nation as far as SUD access and treatment goes. This is, the Oregon Health Authority's, impetus to bring us at least to the 25th or state in the country, or the best, 25th best in the country. So, but it takes a few years to do the development and get it up and operational, rather than having people just in the streets, in tents and homeless. So but our intent is to have this as a licensed facility for substance use treatment purposes, which the state is wholly lacking. We're in Region 1, which includes Washington, Multnomah County, and we are short 2,500 beds in Region 1, which means if you're 16 bed limits, you can do the math, you can see how many more facilities that we need in Region 1. We don't need a lot in Columbia County because we're designated rural, but we still need our fair share for Columbia County residents. Based on recent outcome, because we've been pressing the state, Oregon Health Authority has given us additional funds because honest, Matt and Jacob sort of alluded to phase 2, or what we're calling it, which is a crisis stabilization center and a detox facility. Center for Living, you made Columbia Community Mental Health. UACs. Lost its detox center due to COVID and the loss of skilled nursing. There's a detox facility on here, which is incredible, a high community man. The sheriff supports it. St. Helens Police Department, Scappoose Police Department, EMS, county commissioners, everybody supports the detox center. And so we just got funding to develop a new facility for that. So that's gonna be in phase 2. And then with crisis stabilization centers, because we don't have a local hospital with an emergency department, stabilization is our next best alternative to behavioral health crises and substance abuse crises. So the state has awarded us funding for 8 beds on that. So we have a 10-bed detox and an 8-bed crisis stabilization center, which will go in the same plot. And this is all based on the continuing of care to keep people off the streets, in care, engaged, in recovery, and then ideally back in their own permanent housing with jobs to support themselves and contribute to our tax base. So that's the objective. And if this goes through, since we're awarded funding, this proposed building, even though it's intermittent use, I anticipate I'm gonna find out on Friday if OHA will permission us to get it licensed right from the get-go. So next time we meet, rather than an intermittent care facility, it could be a request for conditional use for licensed residential. So
So we're serving Columbia County residents or? The whole division, the Region 1 or?
So one of the contingencies on any state development of residential is Columbia County residents will have first priority to access. I can tell you right now, we're not going to have the volume. Columbia County has a need, but we don't have that much need. We're doing pretty good. It may not feel that way, but we are. So as a good neighbor and a state funding, we will accept probably people from Clatsop and Tillamook County. We will probably get a few from Washington and Multnomah, but they already have their resources. They really don't need us, but Clatsop and Tillamook do. So that's where our other residents will probably come from.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Jacob, but you're planning for phase 1 and phase 2 together?
Yeah, so, and this is, we want to make sure you confirm this stuff. We're juggling.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that they want to
This is additional stuff.
go forth on the use determination and the access variance. And then the public hearing for the conditional use permit will be postponed to a date and time uncertain to provide enough time for staff to deem the new portion of the application complete. So then we can re-advertise for that and then deal with the conditional use permit portion at a later date.
Which includes the buildings, the building use,
The
and
buildings,
buildings. Like,
yeah.
okay, that's what I was trying to verify.
So then tonight.
Yeah.
Assuming it all works as we think it will. It'll be the variance and the use. So a little more simple.
Yeah.
And the access variance, understanding where you are on that, may help inform, the condition use permit design.
We have Al raising his hand online. Do you want him to respond? As
Sure, yeah, I forgot to, yeah, I knew
Yeah.
it was gonna be online, so.
And then, so we'll want to confirm that with you, since this is the testimony stuff, that makes sense to you. But the city's also asking for grace, because, we're putting CPR to the time where we would ask for a waiver of the 120-day rule. And Al understands that stuff pretty well, and so, if you want him to provide input as someone who's dealt with that kind of stuff, certainly.
So for clarification, I'm gonna go back to step one, is you were, sorry, I went off on a little bit of tangent there. I'm focusing on the one building, 16 bed. Intermittent care facility, similar use proposal, and the access road for our shop. So our three facilities, guys can continue to use that to sort of apply. That's all I'm focusing on tonight. I sort of went off on a sort of a,
Good to have the good picture. Appreciate
Yes,
that.
a full picture. So I'm not worried about that. And so just for clarification, Jacob, what you're asking for is a waiver of the 120 days on those two additional facilities, crisis stabilization and the detox facility.
Well, we have the existing building here that's proposed.
Yes.
And then we're expanding that.
Yes.
So that is captured by the conditional use permit.
Yes.
And so we take the conditional use permit, we add to it, and then we re-advertise and reschedule a meeting to conquer that in its entirety, in its brand new entirety that we didn't know about until September 30th.
We're discussing the first two items, but we're not approving them. Right? We'll do that all together with the conditional use. Is that what you're asking?
Well,
We're doing the
you
access.
could do the access variance and unlisted use tonight. Now, if you're like, well, we just want to do it all at once, then we can just kick it all down the
How
road.
messy that was.
Does it make sense
That
now?
makes sense now.
So it's a matter of how much do we want to kick down the road?
I would just prefer to talk about the similar use and the variance to tonight, do that because what I need to, what I'm looking for is that we have a whole infrastructure that we can start developing on we can start developing laying the sewage line, the electrical lines, the gas lines. We can start doing the road modifications. We can do site development right now, but I don't want to spend, I think it's almost $2 million on that just to have the outcome being, yeah, we're not going to allow the similar use. And then I'm stuck with a whole built out platform with no ability to build. So I prefer to do this before I start doing infrastructure.
My ask is, can we break out portions of the hearing because they're separate things?
Yeah, that would be the idea. So you would be closing the public record and the two things and then
Yeah.
continuing the portion for the conditional use permit
Yeah.
to a date and time uncertain subject to.
Get my head around that. Right, thanks.
Just to confirm, so you are planning on having somebody, if there's a resident there, you will have staff on site.
Yeah,
Okay, let's have Al talk. Go ahead, Al.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right, I'd like to share my screen so that I can point my arrow just like Jacob was doing. Would that be all right?
Sure.
Okay. So you can see that, I assume.
Yeah, it's really small.
Okay, I'll zoom in just a second. So this is the entire site. And CCMH contacted me because they basically wanted to plan for the future. And they knew that this was a difficult site because of all of the issues with sewer and water and gas and everything else that basically, now is that better? All of those utilities are over here. On Gable Road, there are no utilities. The gas main stops right there and goes down McNulty Way. There is, right now, CCMH has a pump station approximately here, the existing building, and it pumps its sewage off the screen almost over to Walmart. In our discussions with city staff, engineering staff, they basically told us that that manhole over there is so shallow that we cannot get a normal gravity line to extend down the streets. And they basically said, okay, if anybody along Gable Road in this area wants sewer, they're going to have to come from essentially the poorhouse. So CCMH contacted me because they wanted to plan for the future, figure out how they can make their site how they could plan their sewage, plan their water, plan everything so that then they could develop their site for the future. So we went through a planning process, and you can see on here, there's the existing building here, but in dashed line, they have a building here, which is to replace these modulars. They also have a building here, which would just be more staff, more services for Columbia County. And during our planning process, we planned for parking lots, we planned for access, we planned for all that stuff. Okay. Also in our discussions with city staff, we were basically told that, well, you're developing, so you have to develop the street. Well, this property has approximately, I want to say 900 lineal feet of street frontage, all the way across the front of that. We were told that as part of that, you would have to upgrade that entire section of the street to the corridor master plan or the waterfront corridor. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, and that includes medians, that includes street trees, that includes the bicycle lanes, and that includes sidewalks for the entire frontage. So we're like, okay, well, if we have to put in all the sidewalks, all the landscaping, the bicycle lane and everything, we'd like to access our existing shop, and we'd like to keep that access point right there. Now, when approximately 8 or 9 months ago, I don't remember when, the surveyor went out there and he did survey this driveway, and he did survey this driveway. However, what's now in your packet, and I'm not going to comment on permitting or not permitting, but I called the neighboring property owner and I said, hey, what's going on? You put a fence in front of your driveway. Are you using that driveway? And he was somewhat irritated. But basically he said, well, yeah, no, I can't use that driveway because the city forced me to put one access in the middle. Okay. If he's been being forced to put one access in the middle, we measured from where he is now using access. So that's what Mr. Kelzer told me. So I still disagree. You know, you could go around and around about, oh, we don't have a deed, or we don't have an easement, or we don't have this or that. He just got done building a fence in front of his driveway because someone at the city told him he can't use that driveway. And in fact, in the memo that Jacob sent you, you can see 2 photographs, and you can see the fence. So I think, you know, trying to claim that, oh, well, that's not a real access point when he's basically been told and he complied. Now, whether it's permitted or not, and he's in the county, I'm not going to comment on that, but that's what has happened. So if we have to build the entire street frontage, we want some surety about where we're supposed to build it. So if we move it over here, as I pointed out here, it just doesn't work for the existing building. And then I get these comments that basically say, oh, well, you could just remodel the entire building, put the door on the back, put the door in the front. That's not what we're asking for. And I think CCMH would prefer to keep, if they got to build, if they're being forced to build all of this frontage, maybe the city should concede a little bit, because like Todd said, they're spending approximately $1 million on all this street frontage. I have a cost estimate. I'd be glad to show it to anybody. So what I may be able to bring up the civil drawing and show you what's happening with the civil drawings. Here's the civil drawings. So here's the existing conditions plan as it exists right now. And I'm going to go down. Now, this is the proposal as the civil engineer drew it. And really, what they want to do is they want to develop this building at this time. You know, all these other buildings we're not applying for, all these driveways that exist or we're showing in dashed lines on my drawing is simply for future. You know, they don't know if they're going to get this money in 5 years or in 20 years, but they have an idea about developing the property, and we fleshed out all that stuff. Now I'm going to go down to the utility plan. This utility, no, it's a grading plan. Where is it? Oh, shoot. Well, the civil engineer did not turn in his utility plan for this because it's not required as part of the application. But basically, the plan is to there's an existing fire hydrant right there. There's an existing 8-inch water main that comes into the facility for fire protection. Part of all of their expenses is to extend the fire main so that we can put a fire hydrant here, and so that we can put another fire hydrant in the future over here. But the plan is to extend this water main all the way across until we get past where that future parking lot is. The same for the gas. Gas comes from over here. The plan is to extend that gas main all the way across the property so that the gas can serve this new building. Same with electrical. We've been having discussions with PUD about how to configure their conduits and underground utilities so that we can come off the existing, there's an existing power pole right there. We'll come off that existing power pole, put a vault, run down here and then extend an empty conduit for future development over here. So CCMH is frankly doing it right, is figuring out what they need to do, figuring out what needs to be done so that they can plan for the future. And they're putting it, their plan is they want to put all these underground utilities in now while this building here is being constructed. So that's the plan. And, you know, city engineering staff basically said you had to have a median. That's what the, you know, the plan says. So we're being forced to put in a median. And we brought up with staff, well, you know, there's property owners over here. The response was that, oh, this is only storage, so that's not really developed. This one is not developed at all. When they develop, that will be their problem. That was the response we got. You know, if they have to put a driveway here and they have to cut the median right there, that's their problem. I think that's short-sighted, frankly, but that's, you know, we're like, okay, here's your drawing. This is what you told us to do. Now, I did propose in our drawings we did propose, obviously there's a median here and I see there's a little driveway there, but I don't know much about that property. But when this neighbor across the street, John Jersey, said, well, that's not going to work for him for what he needs to do. So we proposed on this site plan a striped median. We didn't do anything over here because we hadn't been in contact with the other property owner. But that's what we proposed on this portion of the street frontage. So to get back to this, I don't think, to me, I actually see a couple of options here. One is, you know, the argument is that, well, you know, by having all these driveways so close together, it's not safe for pedestrians. Well, let me tell you something. Having a curbed landscape strip, a curbed bicycle lane before a sidewalk is probably the safest thing that exists in this entire city. So I don't think that that argument is that great, simply because CCMH is going to be following city ordinances and is going to be installing probably one of the safest sidewalks in the city. Because in order for somebody to turn and run over a pedestrian, they got to jump over 3 curbs and some trees. So I think that, you know, I get the whole idea of, you know, getting rid of some driveways, but as I mentioned before, the property owner here has said, hey, they forced me to use this driveway. So I disagree 100%, regardless of what it says on paper. He is physically using this driveway. And I don't think that, you know, we could shift the drive. See, while we're constructing this, we could shift the driveway over to meet the distance standard. But it's going to create a situation that's just not functional for this building. And then the response comes back, oh, well, you could just remodel the whole building. I think that's irresponsible. So while we're talking about it, I'm going to mention this building because we've talked about it a little bit. I did submit an addendum to our application for this addition. And as Jacob mentioned, it was at the last minute, but you know, that's because of the timing of how CCMH was able to acquire this funding. It wasn't something that we knew a month ago. We did not know that this funding was going to be available. So that's why we planned for only that building. But just so you know, as part of the planning process with CCMH, and this was almost a year and a half ago, we had already come up with a design for this addition. So it was relatively easy for us to submit an addendum because CCMH had already planned for the future, was already thinking about this building. And all of a sudden, you know, because they had, just like the city, you know, the city has to come up with a plan so that then they can go out and get grants. Well, that's what CCMH did. They planned for the future. They had a design that met OHA standards. They went to OHA and said, hey, we'd like to get funding for this. Well, all of a sudden, now we have funding. So with the addendum and with I don't know what, I forgot the word right now, but with the extended hearing, that's what we would like to do, is include as part of this approval also this approval. And I think Jacob sent you my very brief addendum narrative. As my original narrative said, we have 11, I think it's 11 surplus parking spaces. And with this future building, we're going to end up not needing more parking spaces for this building. So if, you know, it makes sense for parking. We have already received, she didn't get it to us today, but we've already received a draft traffic impact analysis from the traffic engineer. And the traffic engineer basically said, we're well below the 700 trip cap. I think the number is somewhere around 108. So we're well below that. And other than that, other than the fact that it's just an additional square footage, everything else meets because we don't need anything additional. So I guess that's where we are as far as the street, as far as this, and as far as, you know, all of that. And I agree with Jacob's analysis regarding a similar use. Like Todd said, basically the only reason we're asking for the similar use is because there isn't a there is, like Jacob said, there is not a specific use like this listed. What is listed is a licensed facility, but for this particular use, it's my understanding that OHA hasn't written the rules yet, so technically he can't get licensed. It's one of those technicality things, but in order to solve the technicality, we're just asking for a similar use that is already defined in the St. Helens Municipal Code, but it is not applied anywhere in any zone. So it's pretty simple as far as I'm concerned. I think that's it. Do you have any questions?
Did you want to weigh in on the approach to approve the variance or assess the variance and the unlisted use tonight, but waive the 120-day rule for the conditional use permit to be handled later?
Well, yes, I agree with what, I mean, Todd's my client, but I did make the application. So yes, I'd like to just extend the hearing for the addendum. And I would like to go ahead and deal with the similar use because I think that's pretty straightforward. And I'd like to deal with the sidewalk or all of this development and the driveway, because if we have to build it, we need to know where we're gonna build it. And one last thing on that. And maybe the planning commission can ponder this as well. As I pointed out, all of this is simply aspirational. We don't know when it will be built and if it will be built, but that's what they want to do. And because they want to do it, they're going to put in the underground utilities so that they can do it. This connection, I don't think that if you approve the access variance, it should only be restricted to a shop. As Matt said, they're planning all this, and who knows, maybe in the future they do go out that way. But, you know, these are the sort of near-term aspirations. What happens over here may be even longer. And if we're having to build all this, we need some surety. One last thing that I would like to bring up with the Planning Commission, which is another option. That of phasing. You know, this, like we have said, this is going to be expensive. Maybe the Planning Commission would recommend that we build all of this and stop right there, leave that driveway as a gravel driveway, and develop the rest of the property in this area when CCMH actually does something down here. I think that's all I have to say, really.
So Al, you didn't really answer Jenny's question about willingness to waive the 120-day rule.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's not for the conditional use part.
Right.
Okay. Any questions of Al? Jenny, do you have any questions, Val?
No, I'm good. By the time Al got done, I was crystal clear exactly what the proposal was. So I'm good. Al buttoned down all my questions.
Yeah, me too. Okay. The other questions of staff? But I have a question, staff.
We have the other testimony.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I moved ahead. I jumped ahead.
A lot of applicants.
Any, so thank you applicants. Any other testimony in support of the application? Any testimony neutral? You are not in favor nor against? Any testimony in opposition to the application?
Yes.
Okay, come forward and just state your name. Sorry, I didn't mean to skip you over. I just moved on.
Okay. My name is Sabrina Moore. I own some property that is near this. I'm on the back side, not out on the. You guys had this conversation so many times. I'm not sure. What are you moving ahead with and what are you not? Because he said addendum, but I don't know that that meant the whole building. Phase 1, phase 2.
So the idea is the driveway thing, the arm wrestling over the driveway. That would be something they could rule on
Can you
tonight.
stop my clock, please? I kind of feel like after I get clarification, then it should start.
Yeah, that's fair. Especially because we don't have a sea of people. So that would be something. And then also the determination of use, you know, trying to fit the stick in a peg and make it, resolving that. So the conditional use permit. And the conditional use permit is what would cover the building and other
Both
sites.
phases.
Yes, they're kind of talked about phases right now. But basically, yeah, the stuff that we originally submitted and then the midnight hour, we want to add this to the application. That's what would be delayed to a future hearing, which would be re-advertised.
I'm clear.
Do you have any comments now that you're clear?
I do. I have a lot of comments.
Okay.
Yeah, you start the clock. So as far as their shop access, because that variance part is, and I don't have any thoughts on the determination of similar use. It's kind of all the same thing, so no objections there. The shop variance for their driveway, I kind of understand where they're coming from. They want to keep their existing driveway, but this is all being developed now. We have rules that are laid out for a reason. It is not just pedestrian safety. It is also the flow of traffic. So I feel like since it really is kind of self-imposed, moving a door is not remodeling a whole shop. It's not that difficult. It's a simple building. They should abide by the standards that we have set and not get a variance, which will cause other traffic to stop. Might not come into play so much if the shop access is limited to their maintenance staff and only goes to the shop. But if it is tied in with the rest of the parking lot so that everybody can use it, you have a chance to have a whole lot more traffic there, which means stopping on the road for people to get in there. We're trying to turn out either way. So I think we should follow the rules on that one. And I know that they had mentioned, this is not technically part of the hearing, but they had mentioned wanting to try and get, their utilities and things kind of nailed down for their planning. To my knowledge, the sewer main, up on the other side of McNulty, it's in front of the Painter property. It's about 4 or 5 feet deep. It might be a little shallow. As it turns out, from where they're wanting to build phase 1 to that is actually almost flat. There's kind of a dip in the middle. Is there enough fall there for them? I don't know. People smarter than me can figure that out. But if there is not, I think that it would be advantageous for the city to look into trying to come up with a way to maybe do a pump line that is down where the building that they're proposing now to go up, so that the other property owners across the street, the Dahl property and John L. Jersey, can also have sewer service. It would allow for them to develop their properties and maybe bring in industries that are not such a big user of emergency services, and will pay property taxes because, quite honestly, 22% of the city of St. Helens land doesn't pay property taxes. Not trying to pick on them specifically, that's just how it is. So when we have emergency services problems that we can't fund it, it contributes. And when you don't have enough people paying, you can't hire more cops to take care of the problems. So doing whatever we can to get other property owners developable that will be paying tax, that's what should be first and foremost. We have a lot of nonprofits. They do good work, but it's like in the ballpark of $600,000 a year just off of the low-income apartments. For missing out tax-wise. So when you do something like that, don't keep all the utilities on the one property. They keep saying underground. They're undergrounding everything on their property, not what's out in the public to benefit the rest of the public. And then stormwater is also a concern. I know they're going to do retention pond. Is that going to take care of, you're going to have curbing and sidewalk. Where's that water going to go? Because we don't have any storm sewer in that area. It's ditched now, high winter, it's super full. So I think that's something else that needs to be looked at. And coming across overhead on the PUD
We
poles,
have a little bit of time. Go ahead.
they should underground it because they are going to be spending so much money on the street improvement that it'd be kind of silly to not underground it at this point in time and be out there in 5 years digging it up. We don't know what the power company is gonna do, trying to get power down to the mill site and digging up all their improvements to underground across the road when they could do it now before they do the street improvements. So.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Anyone else in opposition to the application? I guess, yeah, still one minute.
I sort of feel like a frog in boiling water here, that they're sort of trying to piecemeal this all together. And I don't think that's a good approach, that you want to do this little piece and then this little piece and have this amendment. And it's like, and pretty soon we have a huge project. And it is a huge project. And I honestly think that the time extension should be denied. They should come back with a whole proposal and do it all at the same time so that it's clear. I am not clear in listening about what's being approved, what's not, what's going to be delayed. And again, it feels like a frog in water. They're trying to just nip a little thing off. And let's just be honest about what this project is and have everything approved and done at the same time rather than this piecemeal approach. I think there are lots of issues with this property, including the sewer that they're planning on doing at some point in time. We all know that those lines there are already overburdened. So for their connect to our sewer system, probably not going to be allowed because that whole infrastructure needs to be replaced. And that is not the only place in the city where the infrastructure is bad. There are lots of other places. We have already denied other developments in our community because the underlying sewer doesn't exist. And I think this is another place where the underlying sewer doesn't exist for them to connect. And while I'm glad that they want to connect, at some point in time, there's other infrastructure that has to happen first, and it's not going to happen for who knows how long that's going to happen. There's also, they're saying, oh, well, now we have extra parking. We don't need to redo the parking. And, it's just an amendment. Again, it's the same thing, frog in water. It's should be done all at the same time. There are parking issues, there are sewer issues. There are time issues. Frankly, and then there's the whole issue, as she mentioned, about emergency services and paying as a nonprofit. I personally feel that we have done our share. The impact of Broadleaf Arbor on our community has been not positive. Even people that live there have talked about what a negative impact it is. And if you visit the businesses like Safeway and Walmart, and you talk to the people that work there, it's a significant negative impact. You talk about our police coverage. It is the #1 spot in our city for police coverage, and they pay 0 taxes into contributing to that. I think we've done our fair share here in the city. And I don't know, and while I appreciate that we need treatment, I am not thrilled with the idea of, by their own admission, no, we don't have the need for this locally. We're going to be bringing in and shipping in people from other communities because they need it. Well, they need it, let them build it. I don't think it needs to be built here. So if other areas need it, great, build it. I don't want them coming here. I think that we have enough. We have enough, and I think that's the citizens. And again, we have no ability to recover the extra expenses. We already don't have 24/7 police coverage. That stopped. And now you're bringing in a facility that will have, we'll have calls. I mean, that's just the nature of the facility. And my hope is that you will deny this and say you need to resubmit your application. And we're gonna do it all at the same time, and we're not gonna piecemeal this together to sort of like confuse people about what we're voting on, what we're not voting on, and what we're approving, what we're not approving on. And it should come together as a package, and it needs to be better publicized, because there's nobody here. And I can tell you that if people knew what was being planned there, there'd be a lot more outrage, because people are already unhappy about what we have on Gable Road. And I think they would be even more unhappy about what's planned.
The applicant, all three of you could respond in a rebuttal of any comments that have been made. Go up to the table and.
You're not obligated to, but it's your opportunity if you wish.
Al's raising his hand if you'd like him to take.
Sure, Al would like to. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Al.
So can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to talk about a couple of things. If I can share, I will share. Looks like I can. Share. So what was turned in by our civil engineer for the planning process does not include the utility plans. So I have here the civil engineer's utility plan. So I'm going to briefly talk about that. I already basically mentioned it. But basically, if you can see, I'm going to zoom in because sometimes people can't see it on Zoom. Right there is a S. Right there is CCMH's holding tank, and CCMH currently pumps from that holding tank along that line, over here, and then it goes across here. See that double S there? It goes up McNulty Way. It turns, and as I discussed, it goes all the way over off-site. And I've never actually tried to stop and see exactly where that manhole is, but my understanding is it's just between where that food truck is and the neighboring property, which is that single-family house. I don't know exactly where it is. So CCMH is currently connected to city sewer. So the plan is, and you can see it says here, connect to existing sanitary, which means that pump line. And as Jacob said, they call it a step system. I don't know what the acronym means either, but basically it's a pump system that pumps from building to building to building and then on to where it needs to go. Another location where we have a step system, you all may remember a land use hearing down past the Elks. All of those houses down past the Elks on the river are on a step system. So each house has a pump, and it pumps into each house pumps into the pressure main, and then the pressure main goes somewhere, I assume, up above the Elks or who knows where. But so this is the step system. So this double S there, sanitary sewer, will come into a vault there, and it's going to be a backflow. It's going to be where they all tie together, and each one of these is going to have a backflow device. So one of the lines is going to go up and connect to the existing crisis center. So that's where they have two tanks right there. We're going to put a new pump in it, and then we're going to connect. This current crisis center is on the drain field, about where I'm showing a future building. All of these modulars, this modular, this modular, this modular, and this crisis center that's at house right now, they are all pumping over to those two little dots right there. And then they go out into the drain field there. So the plan is to take all of these facilities off of the drain field, connect them to the on-site step system. And then the plan is to add a pump station here. And this pump station will serve this building and the addendum building, the addition to that building. And it can serve a future building here, and it can also serve these existing modulars. So that's the sewer. Water, as I said, there's an existing fire hydrant right there. The plan is to put in an 8-inch water main, bring it all the way across, go up to a fire hydrant right there, also extend it all the way across, and then basically dead end it so that when CCMH does build in the future, at some point, these utilities are installed. And so we won't have to dig up all these parking lots when the future development happens. Same thing for gas. Right now, gas is only here. There's a gas line that serves our existing building. But the plan is to run a new gas main all the way across, come up, serve this current building or this new building, which is the part of the application, but also run the gas main across, dead end it, so that when the future does happen, it will be there and ready for them to go. So now I'm not going to comment on whether or not we should be responsible for building sewer out into the street. Basically, the idea is to connect and upgrade our existing system. Parking. If you look at my narrative, my original narrative, I analyzed parking basically in 3 different ways, based on all past land use decisions that I could find. And so the proposed site plan shows on the entire site, that's not just the addition, but the entire site, based on all of the existing buildings, CCMH should be required to have 138 parking spaces. On the site plan right now, it is shown 149 parking spaces. So we already meet the city's ordinances related to parking. In fact, we have a surplus. And then, as my addendum narrative points out, even with this future addition, those 11, we only need 10 additional parking spaces, and we currently have 11 surplus spaces. So we will meet the parking requirements as well. So,
Well,
yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you, but those are all things we'll probably talk about in the future meeting. Did you have some rebuttals to things that have to do with what we're deciding today, the access and variance and the designation of the kind of use?
Well, my main comment on things that were mentioned is that is what the variance process is for.
Yeah.
People say, oh, you should follow the rules. You should follow the rules. Well, sometimes there are existing conditions, there's existing buildings, there's existing things that don't meet the thing to begin with. And then when you develop, you're basically, someone says, well, we're wiping all that stuff clean. Well, that's not how it exists right now. So CCMH has an existing shop. Jacob went into the whole notion of connectedness and all of that. And yeah, maybe in the future, CCMH will know how they want to connect these potential future buildings, but really that's part of a future application. But if we're being required to build all these sidewalks and the curb cuts, we need to know where they should be, and that's exactly what we're asking for. We're asking for a variance, as we're allowed by the city code, to use the existing location for the curb cut for the shop.
All right, thank you, Al. Did you have anything else that regarding those things? Are you good? Is that all you had to say?
Oh, yeah, that's all I had. I was trying to figure out how to turn me off again.
Okay. A question for staff. What was it now?
I just have one.
Oh, you still have an opposite rebuttal? Yeah, please.
I just want to point
Yeah,
out
okay.
that it's not a strong rebuttal, it's just a rebuttal, is that I do work on the Creekside campus 5 days a week. Get there a little bit before 8, leave there around 5. I've never had in and out access problems. Never. And our trip check has already been established. Even if worst case scenario, you approve that we can build another road there, the number of trips are already set, so it's not going to increase the number of trips that are going in and out of the building. In fact, that'd be a less used road because the other 2 roads are more convenient for where staff parking are. I'm just there to say, I hear a lot that there's a lot of congestion on there and I'm leaving at 5:30 every day. I've never waited more than 5 seconds.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Matt, did you have anything? All right. I did have a question for staff. Where it is, so that what the variance, the access variance we're trying to approve or looking at approving or not approving is the third driveway access to this place, or the distance that access is from the neighbors,
Well,
from the existing access for CSC main.
the main issue is that it has that distance. Obviously, they want to keep the access. Because we get into the rules about minimizing accesses along arterial streets based on the size of the parking lot. The minimum number of accesses would be 2. And that's talked about in the report. I think it's kind of both. And it just provides clarity for them, or it eliminates the uncertainty in that this is okay. And whatever stipulations go with that, be it exclusive to the shop, and any future use for that access would require additional variance, or, however we will work that out.
But if it wasn't exclusive to the shop, it's not a prohibition to have another access there.
We would want to discuss it in the context of minimizing accesses along arterial streets for the function of that.
It's the same facility, so it doesn't
It's the
necessarily,
facility.
it's not an access for another facility adding more traffic.
No, but just our arterial standards, we try to, just like on the highway, you try to minimize accesses.
Do you know how it came into being that they have this access on there?
I was looking at some of the older aerial photos I have, and I don't know how long it's been there. I think it's been there a long time. And, it was in the county, it's only been in the city for a handful of years.
The road has been in the city portion for an extended period of time before that.
Yeah, I don't know when it became a city road. The city's first transportation systems plan was 1997.
Mhm.
I'm not aware of a document that classified city streets prior to that. And I've that building predates that. And so it just goes back to, you know, a different time period.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that, I mean, if that's the case, then it'd be grandfathered in then. There was obviously something there and probably approved by the county. Or if they had
Maybe,
I don't know,
you know, I don't know what the permitting mechanism was back then,
be something to investigate.
but it's an informal gravel driveway servicing a modest building. We're talking about a redevelopment proposal. And so as Al pointed out, you know, we have to look at the standards, especially because it's an arterial street. And that's why, you know, we're talking about it today.
So
So, you know, if there were frontage improvements there and you had the curb approach already in place, you know, then there may be a stronger argument about the grandfathering aspect.
so
But it's the informality of it and the magnitude of the redevelopment is kind of what warrants the reexamination. Sorry, Dan.
no, I keep interrupting you. So the informalness point really doesn't make a strong case for the existing driveway of the neighbors. Could be anywhere. No curb cuts, there's no sidewalk. So
Yeah,
if we allowed it where it is now and you stick to a 200-foot rule, they would be forced to have their driveway 200 feet away without it, once they came in for a variance, after we approve this one. And we don't know what they're gonna do, because they're not in the city yet. They don't have a formal driveway.
you're talking about the Kozler property?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that a bit.
So
So
they don't have
the,
street improvements on that property, do they?
No.
Or sidewalks or anything?
no, and that, and, you know, you probably won't have development of a magnitude that'll warrant that, you know, probably for a long time. I do want to comment, since that was brought up, on the city forcing it. The last time I talked to Mr. Kozler about it was in 2019. So he went to the county, he didn't want to do stuff, the county staff says, which is typical, something I've experienced for my entire 17-year career with the city. Including when I worked for the county a year before that. Someone talks about a development proposal within the urban growth boundary. Hey, you should talk to the city. When there's development proposals, we coordinate with the city. So Mr. Kozler comes in to discuss, and I remember this because I have notes, you know, I have my pre-application notes. We just recently had a Napa Auto Parts. I kept those, we had pre-application notes from 10 years ago. So I keep this stuff to remember, right? So he came in and we talked about, all right, it's a house. You want to convert it to something different. Typically that requires a land use permit, and the land use permit is what means we look at this stuff. We knew it was an arterial street at the time. We get excited about arterial streets. And so we talked about, well, you know, we'd probably look at an access consolidation. We have these three properties, these two tiny ones and a larger one. And what makes sense is that they would all consolidate into one access. That was an informal discussion about a potential development proposal. Now, the Columbia County zoning ordinance is very clear. It's crystal clear, unquestionably crystal clear that a change of use requires a site development review, change of use. It doesn't talk about expanding building footprint. It says a change of use. I anticipated a land use permit for that, in which case we would be able to formally comment on the access. And that would be the time that we would quote unquote force the access change. Now, in my memo, I give credit to Mr. Kozler because he remembers this conversation that occurred 5 years ago and implemented it on his own accord because there was no mechanism for us to force it. Unfortunately, now we have a situation where there was a paved access, which has been discontinued in favor of a gravel access, and mailboxes have been moved, all without a right-of-way permit, which, by the way, is something we also discussed back in 2019. And so we have this kind of quandary issue going on there.
Well, sorry to bring up all the old wounds, but I asked just to be sure that indecision we made on CCMH project didn't affect the neighbor adversely, or is the effect really something we have to worry about? Because it's undeveloped and no curbs.
Yeah, and it's not, it's not within your purview. We have to look at this one here.
I guess the 200 feet from the neighbor's driveway doesn't mean too much.
We just know it's a lesser amount. So we want to
Okay.
see if it's preservable or not.
All right, I think, the questions of
Yep,
staff.
I do.
Yes.
Whose definition is a immediate care facility explained in the brief? As, I mean, to me, it seems like a totally different animal than multifamily development or senior convalescent care
That
facility.
definition is straight out of our development code. So there is a definition of it. But it's not listed in any of the zoning districts. It's referenced in one. And I don't get into those details as much in the brief, but in the staff report, they do talk about that on page
4 of 23.
Yeah, it starts on page 4. And then on page 5. It talks about the listed uses. So. There's the intermediate care facility. And the one place that is referenced is under long-term care facility. So that definition is at the bottom of page 4. So then on page 5, you'll see, we look at long-term care facility since it's referenced. And then we also look at nursing, elderly, convalescent home care and see where that's listed. Long-term care facility is also not listed in any of the zoning districts. And that was kind of the issue. Okay, long-term care facility is not listed. That's the only definition that references intermediate care. But then, so that's why we looked at nursing convalescent home and went, okay, well, that is listed as a conditional use in many of those zoning districts as our multifamily. And that's how we drew the conclusion. Now, we're not saying that you're obligated to agree with that, but that's how we connected the dots in the thought process.
The final question of staff or the applicant? Okay.
Anything from you, Jenny?
Yeah, sorry. So
I'm good.
Okay, thanks.
kind of weird.
Sorry, so my dog barks off and on, so I'm trying to keep that quiet.
So hearing no further questions from the commission, no further response to the staff, record for only for the access variance and the unlisted use question is now closed. Matter is returned to the table for deliberations and oral discussion.
And then we'll want to do a motion on the conditional use permit. We can do it now, or we can wait.
Do it now.
Okay,
We have a motion to,
and that would be to continue it.
Yeah.
To a date and time uncertain to be
So sorry, are we having deliberation?
no, not yet.
We're close.
We're gonna,
Okay, I was like, did I miss something? I was like, wait.
so just to be clear, because we're breaking this whole thing up. And we're gonna attack the two little ones, the unlisted use and access variance. And we're going to continue the conditional use to a time uncertain,
Date and time uncertain based on future notice.
based on future notice. Did someone have a motion like that? I can't make a motion.
I make the motion as you stated.
Second the motion.
How do you vote?
Aye.
Jenny? Sorry, I know you muted it. I gotta figure out how to unmute. Okay,
So we're we're okaying part of it and then putting part of it off?
No, we're just extending the time period.
Yeah, we're gonna discuss the the two items, and we're gonna put off the third item.
Oh, okay, all right,
So. Now we can return to commit, discussion.
With the driveway and that, I'm pretty sure, I mean, even this would help you guys with the neighbors across the way, but it is an arterial road and it's gotta be double lined right through there, which means on that, you can't take a left-hand turn. So they can't come out of their property and take a left and go east, or you cannot, as you go in on that property or on the Gable Road, you can't take a left in any of the properties on a double line. Yellow line, that's my understanding. So if you're going to the your maintenance shop, you drive out of the facility area, you go over to your maintenance shop, take a right into that, come out of there, you gotta take a right. It's illegal to take a left. You can only take a left if it's, a single line, yellow line, but if it's a double yellow line, it's, illegal. And that's why, all these arterial roads are like that.
Double line, is it?
The access variance doesn't impact whether or not there's a striped median in the roadway cross section.
Yeah, we're not,
They're
the
separate-
engineering,
They're separate issues.
engineering's
Well,
gonna
I'm
have.
talking about as it exists right now. I'm not saying about the future, what they're building right now. I'm sure it's, cause it's
Yeah, it's just-
a line.
I don't know how it's germane to the access variance.
Well, I'm just saying that,
Yes.
it impacts the access to these places.
Sure.
So,
That's something your engineering can. I don't know.
I think it also impacts, again, the access of it as a.
As used today, everybody drives both ways. From all these.
right, but
driveways.
I do go through there quite a bit, and that traffic there, when the kids are getting out of school, I don't know if people realize with the buses and people picking up their kids and going back and forth, there's a lot of pedestrian, a lot of bicycle, and a lot of people, and more cuts. And right now it's not super busy at any one time, but you're adding 16 beds, and you say okay to this, that's okay forever. So that's what I think I concur with the other commissioner of concern of approving additional curb cuts in perpetuity, that how many driveways can you have in how much space? I understand what he says
Yeah, I
about
was
the
gonna
gravel driveway.
say I'm not in favor of, keeping that access. I think it should be closed to the shop.
Just have one access there to the side of CCMH.
Say that again?
Just allowing the one big access CCMH has there on the side.
They have another one off of McNulty.
Right. But the Gable Road side or whatever, Old Point Road, whatever we're calling it. Yeah, that one big access.
I don't see any big issue with the access to. It's far enough for the main access and. Not adding any more traffic to the road.
I think it's, this thing about it's turning into it. It's impacts people 40-mile-an-hour street.
Yeah, if you're pulling out of the main exit going left and somebody else is pulling out of that gravel driveway going right, you're going to be sitting there, possibly, that's cross purposes is I think what the commissioner is meaning. Because you're so close together, you're like, are you going? Am I going? That kind of thing. It's pretty close. And so if you don't approve of them having the multiple access, then it's a non-point.
Doesn't seem very close to me.
The spacing is met between this approach that's existing here, Jenny, and the gravel one that serves the shop. It's over 200 feet.
Oh, it's the neighbor one that they're close to.
Yes, that's
Okay.
the access variance is between the gravel driveway to the shop and the neighboring property, the Colzer property.
Okay.
And that's 118.
It's almost 300 feet.
110 or 150, depending on,
Where you measure from.
Referencing your number.
yeah.
We don't know what the distance is from the main access to the shop access. Numbers, there's no number there.
It's in excess of 200 feet. So,
So, yeah.
It's over the standard.
yeah.
That's over. I can't remember how much.
And if I could be convinced to keep it, I think that they should look at the whole project as a whole and that it should be improved. This should be improved.
I think it should be improved.
Improved.
That
We
would
can have an access, should be.
Yeah, not a casual gravel driveway. I think it should be.
I do think it, if we were to approve it, that it's only for that building. But that's stipulated in the, your report.
And, you know, you can allow potential, because the way it's presented in the application, it's all about the shop. The shop is really important. CCMH wants to use this driveway. And so, you know, based on that, you could say this variance grants the access to the shop. It doesn't mean something can't be considered in the future, because it sounds like what can happen, you know, it could go many directions or, you know, maybe nowhere. So it doesn't mean it can't be reexamined.
Yeah.
But at this time, the way it's presented, it's all about the shop.
So they're
You
asking.
know, at least as demonstrated here, the thought of connecting to them apparently hasn't come to be. And so, you know, it's you force that, or do you, okay, it's exclusive. If they want to examine a greater use of this, you know, we could do that with the future variance as the future is more defined for their development of the site.
But my thinking is that, you know, we have this downtown, you know, the development down here, we get, you know, condominiums and that type of stuff. Road's gonna be used quite heavily, even more heavily. So, there's that
I think
aspect.
it's a gateway to downtown in the city and that it should reflect that it should be beautiful and I'd like to see sidewalks down the whole thing.
So would I, I'm not arguing, I'm talking about the access.
No, I'm just saying aesthetically, if you're putting part of the sidewalks in now and then it's in 10 years, they develop the other part and then you have part of the sidewalks then.
Sounds like, that sounds great. I mean, it's.
It's like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I told you it's my,
nice squeaky.
Is that something, a comment on our comments here?
It's like I always say, we have this beautiful plan for the access, and if we just say, you know, someday we'll build that. It's easier to build it as we go. You have development, cost of doing business.
I know, it drives me crazy that we have this transportation plan and
We've done it in one place.
and we don't do it. We always give a variance. I think it should be done every time.
Transportation dream, not a plan.
You know, we're not talking about the engineering for the medium, but since all these properties are undeveloped over there, we don't know what their use will be. Should always be like a housing development. They build the curbs and they do curb cuts when they put the houses in. They do them ahead of time. You know, up in Elk Meadows, there's curb cuts where they didn't want curb cuts and then they had to make another curb cut. So you just adjust it when you need it, right? We don't want to block the excavating people from getting in their driveway, but
So
the
getting
engineer's gonna take care of that.
back to the access, is that, if we confine it just to the maintenance building and its workers, and I mean, as I say, once the development down here comes into fruition, it'll be busier. Can we actually time limit the variance? And do a number of years and have to come back and reassess.
Good, I think it would be kind of clunky. And certainly, you know, discuss it, you don't have to agree with me, but I think my recommendation would be that this variance is granted exclusively for the shop. And if things change in the future, it doesn't mean a new variance can't be applied for to think of a broader use of that.
I was just thinking if it gets so busy that, you can't, and it impacts
Not-
traffic that,
You're not increasing the intensity of the use of the shop. Same shop.
yeah, I know, but I'm the intensity use of the road itself. From, people downtown coming accessing 30.
But we as a city want to have Gable Road developed. Yeah, we have other access issues there because of that, and it's what we want.
Yeah, but we also have an arterial road, that, it's supposed to be, there's certain restrictions to it.
We like the property across the street. We don't want that never developed because of that arterial road, so
That's,
there's gonna be some give and take for sure.
but then, it will also, the person who is and I forget the guy's name next to Door, who's done the modifications with that he did with it. Yeah, to the east. He's gonna say, well, you're letting them have theirs and they're gonna come to you. If he hasn't, it's not permitted, correct? What he's done so far.
Yeah, there's no right of way permit for them.
So I mean, he's gonna say, you said this, you give these guys, a variance for this, and why not me? It's just, and it can just go on and on and on.
I don't think it's really a variance of distance. It's a variance for having another driveway, right?
I think you can, it's distance, amount, and use.
Because I think the use and the number of the amount, the only thing we're really talking about, the distance, they're 200 feet from their existing driveway.
And the use is, it, does it connect to the rest of the property or is it?
Yeah. Yeah. Any other comments, thoughts?
You're suggesting, Jacob, that we leave it grant the variance as long as the shop remains the access only for the shop. If there's any future development in this back corner that we,
They come in for a different variance.
Yeah, if they want to use it for a broader scope, that this variance is exclusive to the shop. Because that's really what they focus on.
Sidewalk and all that stuff is gonna be ending there. It's gonna have one spot unless you do a different curb cut, basically.
Now, in a perfect world, and it depends, we deal with all kinds of different design professionals. In a perfect world, there would have been some early assistance questions, what are the big picture things that you have, city? And, we would have talked about street classification and connections. And that didn't really happen. They got to this point, and now they want to try to defend this plan, and that's perfectly fine.
We discussed the other.
Yeah. So we have the access. And we've kind of discussed but we want to talk more about the use, the
Conditional use.
not the conditional use, not conditional use,
Next time.
what's it called?
Unlisted.
Assume
Listed use, unlisted use.
it's listed.
So is it,
It's a new
I feel like we got this conundrum of this definition, but it's not applied to any zoning. I think staff has done the best they can do to find similar or like kinds of facilities to lump it into at least up to us to decide that, but it seems the best you can do. Fit it in.
I just didn't know if it was like, when I was reviewing this earlier, I missed it, so I didn't want this definition to be plucked from air or something. I'm like, oh, we think that it's, I wanted to know the basis of where
Had to get
it came from.
into the depths there.
Yeah.
I don't really have an issue with.
Yeah, I think to the comments about the type of facility and whether we want it or we don't want it, I think we get into a discriminatory thing. You know, would you want it for seniors? Would you want it for people with disabilities? Would you want it for veterans? I think that calling it a residential facility is the right way to go because it's situation neutral. You know, not prejudicial.
My issue, I wasn't asking that because of who it was
Oh,
serving.
no, the public comment made that. There was a public comment about that.
I just would like to, I don't want it to be a facility with no staff. That's just like
Right.
5 o'clock, see you later, see you tomorrow.
Yeah, because I have family members in different types of care facilities, and Oregon has a different definition for all of these different things. And the Oregon administrative rules are pretty heavily guarded. And if they're talking about being state licensure, there's a lot of requirements there. So, I mean, and using that care facility, the word care implies that it's supervised at what's, and the rate would be what's approved by the state of Oregon. So whether it's 1 to 3, 1 to 10, 2 to 10, that would all be come down from the state.
Yeah. You know, in the applicant's statements, I think that it's unfortunate that we're not only serving Columbia County people, but with the licensing and the money that comes in, it allows us to treat Columbia County residents. So without that addition, we couldn't treat
Yeah.
our residents if we
Not
didn't
for-
treat other residents.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
Right. But as a side note, the state as a whole is going to more region 1 kind of things. A lot of people don't realize community action team serves Clatsop and Tillamook County as well. We always think about community action team being St. Helens only, but a lot of those programs are regional because we're rural. So we're more similar to those counties than say Multnomah County or Washington County. So I'm kind of used to those being lumped together and being shared in resources and shared state representation and shared money. So I think that's the way that they're kind of giving rural people some voice. So I'm happy with that we're going that way as opposed to the other direction.
It helps
You
us
know?
as a poorer county than some of the more
Right.
affluent.
And if it's just part and part, I think that the state will allow only so much when they get ready to license. And he's saying here, they don't have license for 16 beds and they will give it to them, you know, as they meet the state's requirements.
All right. So we have 2 things to make motions on. Anybody? Let's start with the use, unlisted use.
A motion that we accept the unlisted use as stated in the report.
As appropriate for the zoning.
Second the motion.
Okay, and let's vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Okay, and I'm gonna sign every single one.
Figuring out motion for signature.
Oh,
Will they be separate things to sign?
these, I don't know yet.
Okay. Well, we need
The
to,
motion for signature will cover, if you do them for both, we can get that worked out.
okay, so let's have a motion on the access variance for use, number of accesses and distance, I guess. And a varied responses to things about it, so.
Allow a motion to allow the shop access.
Yes,
There's more to it than that, though. isn't
Yeah,
there?
there's more to it.
so allow shop access with the, what we talked about is potentially having it improved, not left gravel.
Right. Allow an improved shop exclusive access.
As, yeah, in the location that they've asked for.
Right.
But we're also limiting it just to the maintenance.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Right. The shop, the maintenance shop there. Yeah, that's what we're not speaking to the other driveway because it's not a variance. So we're just allowing them to have their shop access driveway improved with the shop exclusive caveat.
Yes,
Yes.
so you've made a motion?
As gravel though, or as I'm still not clear
I
on.
said as improved. I put improved in the first version.
Improved means paved, I'm assuming.
Yes, improved, not approved. Yeah,
Every access off of Gable Road will have.
will be paved.
Yes,
What about the sidewalk to the other driveway?
The sidewalk should end at the end of their property.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure that all those street improvements or half street improvements, whatever they are included.
Yeah, and if we're talking about neighbors, you can look at that storage facility and look at their street trees and their sidewalks. So I mean, we're setting a good example down that road that that's the way of the future is we're going to start connecting people. So you can look at on the opposite side where they have the earth movers. It's just down a little ways, but it looks nice. I'm excited.
With this improvement, it gives it some, let's see.
so do we have a second on her motion?
Look at it.
I don't know.
It's messy.
Yes.
All right, I'll restate it. To improve the shop access, pave the shop access as is where is with access to the shop.
What I heard from all that was to approve it. And that it be improved,
Right.
paved,
And be for the shop.
it's exclusive to the shop. And then frontage improvements, to extend to that area. Now, the variance itself,
It would just say it's extended to the property line.
The conditional use permit will have to weigh in on frontage improvements.
Yeah, we
That's
can't-
a larger development.
the variance by itself can't
Ahead of myself.
mandate the frontage improvements, but if a later application does, then this would make it clear that you want to encompass this area.
Here's what I'm thinking still though, if we're requiring the street improvements. Why are we limiting it only access to the shop? And not the future if they're doing the full blown improvements?
Well, we're not voting on that until.
I know, but you're putting as part of the variance that you only have access to the shop.
That's what they asked for.
And you don't have to do that. You just want to say, well, you can have this. But it would be good. And you could be nice and say, we grant the variance for the shop. And as part of the variance, we won't force the connectivity at this time. I don't know, that's kind of clunky. Then what time is it
They're
triggered?
doing the improvements that we're concerned about as far as access to the city. I mean, honestly, my number one preference is to get rid of that driveway altogether. But if we're gonna allow the driveway and they're doing all the street improvements, it's natural that they're only gonna use it for the shop while they only have the shop, but why would they go to all that expense if they
Yeah.
can't finally
That's what I'm
access
saying.
their
I don't
future
understand that.
buildings? So that
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to me.
That's what I said. at the
It
beginning.
kind of
Yeah, so could be,
puts us in a bind a little bit.
so you could just say, well, you can have the access. And there's gonna be that connectivity portion. And I want this to ideally be defined for CSMH, at least for what's upcoming.
So they can do. But
You want to stop for emergency access?
Well, do we even have to say improved right now? Because they'd have to improve it. With their, the next, they come in for hearing. Phase 1 and 2.
For the frontage improvements, now just to pave the access, that could potentially be warranted, because that's not a huge improvement. But on the other hand, the narrative does just talk about the shop. It's just, and when I was thinking about this, that's why, in the report, well, how do you deal with the timing? there's that, well, do you just make sure there's connectivity now? And and it's kind of, you know, they are planning for their future. And should that be more of an included aspect in that planning? Another thing you could do is require it, allow it to occur and require a future connectivity plan that shows how it will connect. Because you know that, you know, they had development in that southeast
Do you have
corner,
another drawing you can put up?
and they had the
No?
potential connection to that southwest corner. Yes, yeah, it's in there somewhere. So you could require a future connectivity plan to show how they're going to do that. And if done right, that could work well with future development proposals.
That's what I was asking about. Forever future things.
Yeah, they are.
Vote on Jenny's motion since you. moved
It-
it.
But, you know,
Just a second.
as was noted, you know,
Used to-
that was, it's sort of pie in the sky and not articulated in the application. And that's why, you know, when I read it, it's all about the shop, all about the shop. Okay, well, you know, granted, be exclusive to the shop. And when things are figured out more in the future, you know, that's when you can relook at it for future.
How do you word the motion for that though?
Well, then you just say that the access
Temporary until future.
is exclusive to the shop. And any other use for that access would require a variance if warranted by the rules in effect at the time.
I think they still need to maintain some access to the shop. It's not feasible for them to go over hill and dale through here and not have any access to their maintenance shops. I
Yeah,
think rarely they need access.
They know it's important for their facilities throughout the community.
That's where it is. So Jenny, you've made a motion of sorts. Do you
Yeah, I'm
want,
withering out here.
you want to amend it or you want to clarify it with our discussion?
Yeah, I'm not I'm scrambled now. So I would make a motion to approve the access as explained by Jacob.
I
You
will
like that way?
Well, so I heard was to accept the applications that what they've asked for with improvements to pavement for exclusive use of the shop
Yeah, just, I mean, Jacob explained it.
to be any future use would whatever.
you restate what you
Yeah,
said.
I mean, that's what I meant in the first place.
Yes.
Make the motion.
So. I can't tell you. So to prove the access variance. With the conditions that the access will be improved, paved. It's exclusive to the shop. Another variance would be required for expansion of that. And then frontage improvements when warranted, because this variance itself does not warrant that, frontage improvements when warranted to extend to this area to the property line.
Like that,
Perfect.
Jenny?
So moved.
No, you had to-
No, you're just making the second. You have to be.
Yeah, okay. I'm seconded then.
Okay.
Whichever.
Or not second, you made the motion.
I
Right.
make the motion.
You have to make the motion and then
As stated by Jacob.
who's gonna second it? Jenny's motion as stated by Jacob.
Well, it was a different terminology at that time, so.
Who's gonna second it? Only two people here can do it.
Jennifer, you want to second it?
I'll second it.
Okay, well, how do you vote?
Aye.
I,
You could say nay. Seconded, right?
Yeah, you can.
Any way you want.
Get it on the-
Okay, so we've handled both of them. Do we have a motion to have me sign
You'll move.
something?
It would be both.
For signatures on both.
And how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay.
I,
Okay. I think, well, let me finish the script. The final written decision of the planning commission may be appealed to the city council. The notice of decision will be mailed to all persons who testified or submitted comments, and the appeal deadline will be included in the notice. Thank you. Lots of rigmarole to get to a point, but
Yeah,
thank you for sitting it out.
2 hours and 25 minutes later. Or 20 minutes, because it started at 7.
We'll see you at a certain date, uncertain. Certainly, we'll see you then. I'm certain we will. Okay. The planning commission term expirations,
Let's see. So,
what some of you didn't hear was that
no, we
I hiring.
we, didn't cover everything. So I confirmed from, David that he does want to continue.
Oh, that's right, people.
Yeah, he wasn't here, and so we need a motion that the planning commission is cool with that, so we can let our counselor know and Kathy know to make that appointment at the next meeting.
okay, I have a question. How many absences are allowed in a year?
Yeah, I'm just gonna.
Back in the day,
Approved.
Absences.
Do I have that information?
Three. Unimproved.
That absences from council or joint and council.
It's just this.
I mean,
This is the
planning,
plan.
yeah.
Here it is. So this is per the municipal code. A member who is absent from 3 consecutive meetings without an excuse as approved by the planning commission is rebuttably presumed to be in non-conformance of duty. And the city council shall declare the position vacant unless finding otherwise following the hearing. We've done that once before.
was that last year or the year before?
But it's 3 consecutive.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Annual.
they came one time, maybe 2 times and never came again.
One of the meetings they were here for was a code amendments meeting that went until 11 PM.
Yeah.
That's why they never showed up again.
They were
Just, because people set up these hearings, and it's like, if we can't get a quorum together, you
Yeah.
know, now that we can Zoom and stuff, I just want to make sure that people are, you know, okay with the commitment and are on board with the commitment. You know, I understand life happens and people get sick, but that's why I was checking.
So what I announced that this meeting is I'm not re-upping for next year or the end of this year. My
You didn't
position is
you
open.
didn't even have to retire. You could have just missed the next 3.
Can we go back to the David thing?
Yeah, so
I'm a no. If, I'm not making a motion on that, and I would say
What?
from him continuing,
Oh,
this bothers me. It's like,
Yeah, it's definitely worthy of a conversation.
and I realize I wasn't here last month, but it's on a planned vacation, so I don't know that, I think people need to commitment and stick with it, be here. And I understand that when people get sick, but
do we have a record of?
Yeah, she's pulling it from.
Yeah, Christina's looking at
It
the.
doesn't seem like it's been that many. He's been on Zoom a few times.
he was at the last meeting
He was at the joint meeting.
last meeting.
or the
Yeah,
joint,
he was at the
joint meeting.
Yeah.
Make you cranky with the CCMH stuff?
No, I don't think so. It isn't like people sitting up here and participating and having a trouble getting a quorum.
The problem twice and then the joint meeting. Where 2 people, right? twice in a row.
There were quite a few people absent from the joint meeting. And if we're being consistent, I mean, Charlie's been absent.
I have an issue with that too, so I just,
So, okay.
if I'm chair, it's gonna be a conversation that I just think people need to.
Well, I think basing it on the record is,
Well, with the joint meeting, they switched it, so.
Yeah.
that's true. It wasn't a regularly scheduled meeting.
Yeah.
It got moved.
Right, I thought it was the day before.
That's right.
Well, Christina's looking that up. The other thing I wanted to talk about, so the deadline ends soon. And I meant to look at the date,
Deadline for,
The applicants
There's about other members.
And other members?
Yeah.
I can tell you that too.
Oh, you're just saying average? Is that what you meant?
I mean, I looked back to see for this year. Hold on, I can tell you
It's like
everybody.
every once in a while, I can understand having an issue, having a quorum, but it seems like it's getting worse.
In the summer.
You want to know all members' attendance or just David's?
A lot of empty chairs. No, Jenny's here.
Mine's a ghost chair.
You're the ghost chair. One of these. Oh, yeah.
it's in the hot seat, so let's.
Yeah.
yours is the ghost chair, cause you've. Yeah.
So he's-
Your interview questions, right?
He missed 2 in the last quarter. He missed 1 in the first quarter. He missed none in the second quarter. He missed 2 last quarter, and now he's missed this one,
So that's 4.
the start of this. It isn't consecutive though, because he was at the last meeting, I believe.
Yeah, it's not a question of.
Seems like a lot.
There's now 4 and
But I mean, that's half the meetings. It's like half the meetings of the year he's been gone.
It's fine.
I missed one this year, maybe. Wife was having an
I
operation.
mean, when you take on this obligation, and I don't know what Brooke's situation. or it's just
Brooke is
like-
at the PUD's appreciation dinner tonight, so her other job. She's working at her other job.
With the new members, they just seem like. they're missing a lot.
Yeah, she mentioned with the joint meetings that she has to take PTO for those because they start at 4. And so she actually asked our opinion about if this was a crucial one for her to attend. You know, she would have if we had said yes on that.
Brooke has only missed, she missed 1 last quarter and then she missed this one.
How many has Kastner missed?
Kastner, I was just looking at his. Kastner and missed.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, I'm still working too, and
Yeah, I mean, it's like I rush home from work at 5:30. You know, it's kind of back to back for
mean,
everybody.
it-
but him.
is it?
For 15 years driving from Salem.
Yeah.
Kastner
Is it an
has
issue that
missed,
we moved it to 6
um,
o'clock instead of 7
5
o'clock?
as well.
Okay, Kastner's missed the same amount as David.
Yeah, it's an issue.
I wonder if,
maybe it should be.
We should have, yeah, that should be an agenda item to discuss, just to kind of.
Well, has it been a year or so that we've had it at 6 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock, or maybe it was a couple of years ago?
You-
Well,
Timing.
Moved it to 6
Oski
right
was
before I
still
came
on.
on.
And it seems like that's been a while now.
I can tell you.
Yeah, we can just put attendance on the agenda and you guys can talk about
Yeah,
it.
that'd be great.
But do you needed to have an answer today?
Not necessarily, because we still have the November meeting and the appointment can be renewed at the December meeting, and it's still good for January. We're talking about Commissioner Rowe. Yeah, okay. You just went to. So
PM meeting
I can't-
February of next year.
So I'm not sure if I can retire yet, because we're putting it off.
Right. We'll let you know. I'm voting no, you can't retire, but.
I thought you said no.
We're gonna allow you to zoom in, Dan.
Okay, I'll zoom away.
So you want to table the motion for Rosengard at this
Yes.
time?
I
Okay.
do.
Table me.
So then the other question is, we are at towards the end, might be the 10th. Is when the next limit. And I think we had one new potential recruit. Although it's an attorney, so we have that problem with more than two people. But we also have 3 who threw their ring or threw their name in the hat before we had the opening. Christina contacted them and 2 of those expressed interest. So we have a pool. I'll have to have a conversation with Counselor Gunderson to determine whether or not he thinks we have an adequate pool to do interviews.
2 current that are willing to sign up and do it right now.
Yes, who are recently contacted and responded favorably about their interest on being.
Did they apply for everything we have at the city and?
Just applied for.
Just for planning commission? We had one of those, yeah.
So we do have a pool for Dan. So the question,
Congratulations, Dan.
You're definitely off.
I guess so.
It's gonna take 2 people to take you.
now, but that's a question for you. But if
Why is that just a question to him instead of to the committee? It seems like last time it was the committee that it was supposed to.
I'm just trying to make you mad tonight. No. The reason is the commission rules say that the council liaison is supposed to determine whether or not there's a sufficient pool. So I'm just,
Yep, that's fine.
I'm not trying to exclude you in the conversation. That's not trying to do with that.
I'm mad. I'm not.
Yeah, Jennifer's ready to throw down. Get ready.
I'm mad.
It's all gonna be based on like the response that we get from David and from Charles, correct?
Just David's up.
Charles isn't up.
Yeah, Charles.
Not up for
He's serving another.
duration.
Well,
I thought
He doesn't attend.
no.
This is to Dan's.
Dan's
I
had
know,
enough.
I know Dan's had enough.
Yeah.
I know.
Dan's had enough. Castaner's not up. He has not said, hey, I want to, he has, to my knowledge, has not expressed.
But I thought David said he wanted to re-up,
Yes.
Yes.
but then there's the attendance issue.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the commission said, all right, well, let's table the motion for David. Let's have that discussion. So we'll see what happens then.
That makes sense.
But we do have at least one certain vacancy.
Certain.
We could have 2.
Almost unfillable.
Charlie's
Running
serving.
for city council, right? I mean,
Oh, then
Jenny
you
could
could
have
get
2.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's a good point.
All in the same period, yeah.
That's happened before.
So at that point, I'd say the pool's too small.
Yeah, but we don't
Your
know that.
resignation might not be
Have the
accepted.
minimum number to
We,
fill.
we will know that next meeting,
Oh.
next meeting is,
Gosh.
oh
Yeah, right after the election.
after.
yeah, and probably. Yeah, we could, so I wanted to bring up the planning commission interview committee, but,
So is me and Jennifer or what?
Is there enough membership? Maybe Dan can serve as a post honorary interviewer.
Well, it's,
do you wanna wait? for interviews till after the
I
election?
can, but people have done that before.
No, I just,
I won't be gone yet.
all these people,
Then
there's just potential, it's very limited.
Yeah,
it's just still fine.
okay.
That makes sense.
All right.
Sorry.
So let's talk about the planning commission interview committee at the next meeting then. Cause it sounds like we have to talk about some stuff and see what happens with the election. So once again, this will be a discussion item.
We had a fun meeting one election night. Someone was worried about whether they were gonna get that position and didn't.
Well, if David realizes our expectation is for him to show up, maybe his answer is different. He's like, I can't do more. I can't do better. So.
Yeah, or there's just a lot of personal stuff and we want to give them, yeah, some grace.
Okay. Well, we beat that up enough.
Yeah, I thought that was gonna be a quick one. Yeesh. Anything else on the agenda that? Corrective, anything? Records, decisions, planning, activity report?
On the proactive items, just wanted to read a real quick little education piece on the architectural standards, which is in regards to the historic district. And I was on the National Park Service site, and it states that the National Register of Historic Places is the official list of the nation's historic places worthy of preservation, authorized by National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. The National Park Service National Register of Historic Places is part of a national program to coordinate and support public and private efforts to identify, which we've done, evaluate and protect America's historic and archaeological site resources. Under federal law, the listing of property in the National Register places no restrictions on what a non-federal owner may do with their property, up to including destruction, unless the property is involved in a project that receives federal assistance, usually funding or licensing. And then I did watch the meeting, and just for the commission's purposes, when it was stated that 325 Strand was not historic, it is in fact part of our historic inventory. So keep that in mind when you're making decisions on whether it's historic or not.
No restrictions?
No, unless you're getting federal money. It doesn't, there's city, if it's a city landmark, it's different.
We have our own rules that.
And state, there's state,
There's
state
only
laws too.
county, there's county.
That strikes me, that's odd for the fence though.
It is, no. It's on us. Let's protect them. Figure out how we do it. So, and make the right decisions.
So for your information items, anybody have any for your information items that?
An interesting, we have a new newspaper of record because the Chronicle's kaput.
Yeah.
So we had to go back to the Spotlight. Now, this is kind of an interesting story. When I first got here back in 2007, the Spotlight was the newspaper of record. And we had a lot of new counselors at the time. And they put out an article that wasn't too kind to them. And they switched to the Chronicle. And that's what we've been ever since. And now it goes back to the Spotlight.
The
So I just-
Spotlight and the
kind of
Chronicle at the
interesting.
same time.
There's a bunch
Did
of
they do
differences.
both?
We'll miss all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't recall that. It may have
And, Spotlight always had the Bears. Chronicle there. And one of our commissioners was the former editor in chief. What was his name?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty cool.
I will say it, the Chronicle generously donated their entire collection to the Historical Society for us to do research. So we have copies of newspapers back into the 20.
Wow.
Very cool.
Wow. Well, good. That's a resource.
Digital files too.
What about preservation of it?
I'm sorry?
Preservation of it?
Yes. We're preserving it, so it's not open to public just because it's all very brittle, but we can help do research.
They're actual hard copies, they're actual paper.
They're bound books of all back in the, most of them are.
So
Well, have all that new space in the other building for. So,
So Jenny, any movement on the trail? Project?
I do, so city councilors and support staff of commissions are attending a training on Monday, November 18th about that public meetings law and the changes related to like subcommittees and things like that. I guess it's limited seating, so once everyone registers who's been invited, if there's additional space, we're gonna open it up for commissioners to attend. But we just don't know if there's enough room, because right now it's commissioners, staff, city councilors, it's county, so.
You just said commissioners twice. You said.
counselors,
Oh, you mean
commissioners,
the-
staff. Yeah, exactly. So not just our
Yeah,
agency.
so that's something that I'd like to attend.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah, and I wanted to be able to say here, register, but
You zoom into it.
Kathy said if by November 4th, there are still available seats, she'll send notice to boards and commissions.
Is there a way to zoom into it though?
It's in person. They do, I wonder if they share their slides though. Cause it'd be great if we could just send out information. Yeah, it's not offered by us, it's offered by the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. It's actually intended for people who are newly elected, right? Cause the election happens and then they, I've never been so they bring them in, but. Someone alluded to this training at the last joint meeting and I just wanted to follow up and say, sorry that we can't invite you all yet. And watch for your email from Kathy.
I thought it was mentioned at the,
It was mentioned and
Kathy
this is what,
sent out an email
yeah, she did.
to everybody.
So, we should hang on to our packets about the CCMH.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Dan. Yes, there'll be a revised staff report.
And like a historical document because the way it's been evolved.
Yeah, CCMH projects, there's always a little bit of chaos involved with it.
Before we close, I do have one question about the testimony regarding the sign ordinance. It seems like the city council, if it fell on their laps, it's kind of a conflict of interest because it's those people that are putting up the signs that are, so is that in our,
Some
is
of them are not.
that anything we should be addressing or
Yeah,
this board? It just, understand what I mean? It's conflict of interest. It's all the city
Yeah, no.
council people, mayors that are.
all we do is, I guess, say if it's good or not, somebody else has to enforce it.
Yeah, every year, there's political sign craziness. There's a lot more emotion this year than in the past. And so,
I wrote it, I was a complaint writer on that sign and my issue was not all the details. My issue is coming to work and finding signs in city parks
Yeah,
and finding signs on city property. That was my issue. And everybody knows that city property. And I just thought, how rude. It used to be a huge deal to the council
legal.
8-9 years ago about litter and just what that makes our town look like when we don't follow those rules. But it was determined, I guess, unofficially that the city didn't have the bandwidth to enforce it.
Did anybody
So-
get back to you or you just heard that through the grapevine?
A note was sent out by Kathy to all the candidates to please conform your signs and
Okay.
gave them the deadline of the 11th to do so.
Well, I know when it came up to the council and Brian brought it up, I would have loved to have said something, but then am I picking on somebody? You know what I mean? If I'm saying a certain
Neutral.
person can't do this, or a certain person can, that to me is like.
Yeah, it needs to be for
I'm not
everybody. The rules
enforcing
need to be
it.
straight across
You
the.
gotta stay out of
Putting a
it.
Sign in my yard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You
what?
gotta stay out of it, especially in that form.
So, and Jenny talks about, because the council used to be very aggressive on that. And that trickled down to staff.
When it was garage sale signs, because they're just everywhere.
sign
Which board?
order.
Used
sign
to be real
order
estate,
General.
Class can I to pick up your signs and you put them in the right of way.
And I have some pictures from that era and like along Gable Road. It was pretty messy and it's not
Yeah.
something that the council of recent has.
Doug Morton got his Subaru and went out and cleaned them up. He's like, we're done.
Yeah,
Like
Doug
a
was one
cleaning
of
up
the
the mess.
proponents of the sign thing. So it
Yeah.
it hasn't blown up in several years like it has this year. And so the issue is staff responding to this. I don't want to call it really, it's been a big deal before, but it's been a while. It's elevated. And that's part of the issue.
But when you run for office, you get a copy of those rules. And as an elected official that's sworn in, you're sworn in to enforce those rules and to follow those laws and those rules. And it just says a lot about people when They can't read a simple document and conform to it. So it's just sad.
Yeah.
So I just didn't want signs in city parks. It was just making me irritated that morning.
Okay. I think we're.
90 days.